Welcome back, everyone. And now we're moving on to our next speaker. Here to introduce to us the cultural lens of victim blaming, we have Dr. Queenie Tua'au, a recent graduate of California Baptist University's doctoral program in social work. She's an active advocate of child sexual abuse, especially of Samoan children, and is striving to eliminate the stigma attached to speaking up about social concerns, as well as the notion that doing so will bring shame to the family. Her workbook on child sexual assault, which was completely written in Samoan to better reach the community, is her most renowned work to date.
It is an honor to be here and to collaborate with you all in regards to this important topic, especially within our Samoan community. So as Andrea stated, my name is Dr. Queenie Tua'au. Oh, I'm sorry. A disclaimer before. Thank you so much, Tia Reed, for starting us off real quick. But I wanted to let everybody know that some of the contents that I will be talking about might trigger somebody. So it is really important to practice self-care. If you need to step away from the computer, turn off the volume or anything like that, please feel free to do so. It is really important that we take care of that. So a little bit about myself. My name, of course, Andrea mentioned, my name is Dr. Queenie Tua'au, and I was born and raised in American Samoa. So this is the reason why my heart is really drawn towards the youth of American Samoa and the social issues that's rising in American Samoa. It's because I was born and raised there, and I've seen the social issues firsthand. So I really wanted to do something that I can help out the community and see what really is out there that we can try and mitigate some of these social issues. I am a graduate of Samoana High School, so if anybody in here that's from the Sharky Town, holla. I graduated in 2001. And then after that, I went on to American Samoa Community College in 2003. And then I went on through this whole education journey until today. I received my bachelor's from Manoa, and then USC, fight on, whoever went to the town of Trojans. I got my master's there. And then in a couple of weeks, I will be graduating with my doctorate in social work at California Baptist University. So this whole journey really started with me not knowing where my path is. I really wanted to, when I went to college, I didn't know what social work is. And I mean, I've heard of social issues in American Samoa, but I didn't know which route that I wanted to go. But God has his ways of showing us of the path that he wants us to be. And this is the whole journey that I've been going through with my education. And really a lot of my background is in social work. Currently, I do work for the state of California, Child Protective Services. So when I see that change from the kids that I work with in California, it really motivated me to want to do something so I can see the change in the kids in American Samoa and what we can do to help out. So that's a little bit about me. So with my whole doctoral program, my research really was focusing on child sexual abuse. Like I mentioned, I grew up hearing about sexual abuse, like child sexual abuse. And it's funny that when I think about it now, it's really, people do talk about it, but they don't really go deep, like talk about like why it's happening and the trauma that these victims go through when they're sexually abused. So when I look at it, I want to look at it from a cultural perspective, like what really is happening and why is there so much silence around the problem, yet you see it on social media. There's cases on Samoan News every single day regarding child sexual abuse. So I know the Alliance has done great work on advocating for sexual assault and domestic violence, but specifically for child sexual abuse, what can we do? So when I did my research, I was focusing on the silence around child sexual abuse. And a lot of it has to do with the cultural factors that comes with it. The whole, the Samoan culture is very unique. And it really is, it speaks to a lot of what we do and how we run our families and the systems that we have, the Matai system and all that. So how can we use that because obviously we can't take it away or do anything about it. But how can we use those systems to help and break the silence around child sexual abuse? So the whole work that I did, and I defended a couple of weeks ago, it got me to where I am today. And like it was mentioned earlier, I did develop, there was a lot of collaboration and consultation regarding this. And I wanted to bring something that's culturally adapted, that's culturally sensitive for our people, so that when it's taught, it sticks. And when it's taught, like they'll take action on what to do. So the translated workbook on how to prevent child sexual abuse really is a training that was done by Darkness to Light Agency, which is one of the agencies in the United States has developed a training which is evidence-based. It's shown that it's proven that it's effective when they train people on how to prevent child sexual abuse. So the whole workbook that they had, I translated the whole workbook in Samoan. So it's finalized, but I just have to do some more work on it before it's implemented. And my goal is to be out there in American Samoa in a couple months to implement this training and try and see how effective it is, because it's one thing that's effective in the United States, and a lot of the people in the United States, of course, do speak English, and there's a different way. When you do training in English, it's different than when you do training in the Samoan language. So that's the whole goal from my research. Now, that's a little bit about me. I know it's a lot, but let's dive into what victim blaming is. So we all know what victim blaming is, right? I'm pretty sure whether it's in Samoan or in English, it means the same. It really means that it's a tendency to hold the victims partially or entirely responsible for the harm that they do, right? I mean, something happens to you and you're getting blamed for it because it happens to you. So if you look at like some of these questions that it came to mind when I was preparing for the presentation, it really, I mean, have you heard of someone telling you, I told you not to walk home alone when something happens to you, when you walk home alone after school, or you should have now social media, everybody's on social media, you know, like something happens to you because of a picture you sent or a picture you posted. So all of those really it manifests, like victim blaming manifests in so many ways, like from thoughtless comments from friends and families to the behaviors of the perpetrators, right? And a lot of the times people engage in victim blaming as a defense mechanism. They engage in victim blaming to distance themselves from uncomfortable reality of abuse and to maintain a sense of control and security, and also to preserve societal norms and values, right? Like the Samoan community, that it really is, we're really trying to preserve our values within our families. And it's good, but then that also contributes to victim blaming. So there is, as any mental health issue and any issue social issue that's in the community, there's stigma and there's shame, right? So in Samoa, it is important that we understand the cultural factors that contribute to the shame and the stigma surrounding victim blaming. There is a strong emphasis in the Samoan culture as like maintaining their reputation, preserving the family honor. It creates a societal pressure to protect the family's reputation by silencing the victims and blaming them for the abuse that they have experienced. Tradition, gender roles, of course, and power dynamics also influence the attitudes towards victims. This leads to victim blaming and the lack of support. So there's a lot that goes into here. Like the stigma, we really need to understand that the shame and the stigma that's associated with victim blaming, it really is re-traumatizing the victim if we do not understand it. So it's important. Like I cannot stress enough the importance of how victim blaming and understanding what the factors are can really re-traumatize the victim. So like I mentioned, the cultural values, the Samoan culture, it really has strong emphasis on maintaining the family reputation. So this really can create the pressure to protect the family's image, and sometimes at the expense of addressing abuse or holding perpetrators accountable. The importance of family and community play a central role in the Samoan culture. It leads to the reluctance to address abuse within the family or community, as it may be seen as a betrayal of the collective and disrupt social cohesion. Cultural norms and expectations. So we need to understand that the cultural norms and expectations around relationships, the gender and the respect can contribute to victim blaming. These norms perpetuate harmful beliefs that blame victims for their own experiences of abuse can hurt them. And then, of course, the fear of shame and the stigma that's associated with the abuse. It also prevents the victims from speaking out and seeking help. So the fear of being judged when you talk, when you report something that happened to you, that fear of being judged and being blamed can further perpetuate the victim blaming within the Samoan community. So some of the cultural factors that contributes to victim blaming is collectivist culture. So, I mean, I speak a lot about like the cultural factors, especially within the Samoan community, but there's a lot of factors that goes into the victim blaming, and the collectivist culture is where the need is, and the reputation of the community and the family, that is where it's highly valued. And this emphasis of collective and collective well-being can sometimes lead to the prioritization of maintaining harmony and protecting the family's reputation. So a lot of it has to do with protecting the family values, protecting the family reputation, and a lot of times addressing the abuse that has happened to the person is pushed aside, and it results to victim blaming. The family honor and respecting the elders, the authority figures, in maintaining, of course, again, the family honor, are deeply ingrained cultural values in the Samoan community. So victims face blame and stigma if their experiences of abuse are seen as tarnishing the family's honor or reputation. The pressure to uphold family honor can contribute to victim blaming in order to preserve the family's standing in the community. The gender roles and expectation. Traditional gender roles and expectations can also contribute to victim blaming in the Samoan community. The societal expectations for women to conform to traditional gender roles, and deviations from these roles may be met with judgment and blame. And these also results in victims, especially women, being held accountable for the abuse they have experienced rather than focusing on the actions of the perpetrators. So victim blaming, it has a lot of impact on the survivors. Significant negative impacts on the survivors of abuse. And some of the effects that the victim blaming have on the survivors is the increased shame and self-blame. The victim blaming, it reinforces feelings of shame and self-blaming in survivors. So when society places the responsibility for the abuse on the victim, it can make them internalize the belief that they are at fault for what happened to them, which it leads to guilt, worthlessness, and self-doubt. The isolation and the lack of support. Victim blaming can make survivors feel isolated and unsupported. So when victims are blamed for the abuse they have experienced, they may feel judgment, rejection, or disbelief from friends, family, and the community. And this leads to the reluctance to seek help to support, exacerbating their feelings of isolation. Delayed healing and recovery. Victim blaming impacts survivors' healing and recovery process. So when they are blamed for the abuse, it can make it harder for them to acknowledge and process their trauma. These leads to the delay of recovery, as they may struggle to seek appropriate support or engage in healing activities. And then there's also the secondary victimization. Victim blaming results in secondary victimization, believe it or not. This is where survivors are re-traumatized by the negative responses and attitudes they encounter. It occurs through insensitivity comments, disbelief, victim blaming attitudes from authorities, or even re-traumatization within the legal system. Secondary victimization can further harm survivors' mental and emotional well-being. Underreporting and reluctance to seek justice. When victims are blamed for the abuse, it creates a fear of not being believed or facing further blame and judgment if they report the abuse. These leads to underreporting and the reluctance to seek justice, allowing perpetrators to continue their abusive behavior without consequence. And lastly is the impact on mental health. Victim blaming can have severe consequences on the mental health of survivors. It contributes to the development or worsening of mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and even suicidal thoughts and behaviors. The constant blame and lack of support can deeply affect the survivor's sense of worth and overall well-being. So now that we talked about the impacts on the survivors, how can we challenge victim blaming, right? Challenging victim blaming in Samoa, of course, it requires a multifaceted approach that takes into account the cultural context and the specific challenges that's faced in a community. Education and awareness. Increasing education and awareness about abuse dynamics, consent, and the impact of victim blaming is essential. This can be done through community workshops, summits like what the Alliance put together. It can be done in so many different ways that incorporates the cultural aspects of the Samoan community. The cultural sensitive dialogue. So engaging in open and respectful dialogue within the Samoan community is crucial. And this is what I learned throughout my research. There's, in the Samoan community and Samoan language, there's a way of rewording English words so that it's culturally sensitive and appropriate for the people that are being trained. So it's important that we understand that the cultural sensitive of a lot of these dialogues needs to be incorporated in a lot of these engagement and communications. The empowerment of survivors, empowering to share their experiences. We're all storytellers. So let's help one another, like share your experience. And then if they share it, that we have to provide them with the support and the resources that they need in order for them to heal and recover. Community involvements. This is really big during my research, is involving with the community, and how I got in touch with the Alliance is because of the wonderful work that they do. And I wanted to collaborate and involve with what they're doing and see how I can help, because they are at the forefront. They're on island, they're at the forefront of all these issues. So involving respected community members, religious leaders, pastors, village chiefs, since we have that Matai system in our culture. And it becomes a collective effort to challenge victim blaming and promote a culture of empathy and support. Support services and resources, and ensure that there are accessible and culturally appropriate support services available for survivors in Samoa, which is one of the main reasons why I'm really looking forward to piloting what I have developed and see really if it's effective, or if there's another way that we can go about creating another solution for either victim blaming, because if you look at child sexual abuse, victim blaming starts from, a lot of it is the sexual assault. I mean, not so much with the other crimes, but a lot of the victim blaming that we hear and see, it's from sexual assault. So really it's looking for that chance or that gap where we can really sit down and talk it out and see what else is out there that we can try and help out victims of sexual assault, especially victim blaming as well. So the importance of support, we all know that we need support, and with support, we can do a lot of stuff. So validation and affirmation, the victims that are experiencing the abuse and victim blaming often doubt themselves and their experiences. So providing support offers validation and affirmation that their feelings and experiences are valid goes a long way. Emotional healing, support environments and relationships can contribute to the emotional healing of survivors. And this can be done by offering empathy, understanding, and a safe space to express their emotions, survivors can begin to process their trauma and work towards healing and recovery. Breaking that cycle of isolation. Really, isolation, it's really one of the main reasons that some of these youth have suicidal thoughts, and some of them act on it. So breaking that cycle of isolation can lead to feeling of hopeful that there's something that they can look forward to. Encouraging reporting and seeking justice. I mean, reduced re-traumatization, which is also secondary trauma, empowerment and resilience, and shifting the societal attitudes of us towards victim blaming and sexual assaults. So cultural sensitivity and resilience, these are important aspects to consider when addressing victim blaming in the Samoan community. Victim blaming can be deeply rooted in cultural norms and beliefs. It is crucial to approach the issue with cultural sensitivity, respecting and understanding the unique cultural context of Samoa by acknowledging and respecting cultural values, traditions, and perspectives. And interventions can be designed in a way that resonates with the community and promotes positive change without disrespecting or erasing the cultural identity. Promoting cultural resilience refers to the ability of a culture to adapt, resist, and recover from challenges. In the context of victim blaming, promoting cultural resilience means working within a cultural framework to challenge harmful beliefs and practices while respecting and preserving cultural identity. It involves engaging with community leaders, elders, and cultural influencers to promote change from within the culture. Building on cultural strengths. Cultural strengths and assets can be leveraged to challenge victim blaming. For example, the strong sense of community and the collectivism in Samoa can be harnessed to create supportive networks for survivors and challenge victim blaming attitudes. By building on these cultural strengths, interventions can be designed and to promote empathy, understanding, and support for survivors while respecting the cultural context. Emphasizing community involvement. As I mentioned earlier, community engagement is really important with a lot of these social issues that's on island. And I cannot do it alone, and I'm sure you can't too. But with everybody together, we can create something that's meaningful and helpful for all these survivors. And promoting dialogue in education. Education is key. Awareness is really what people can learn and what they can do if these issues come up. And I mean, I talked about these earlier, like what we can do, like raising awareness about victim blaming in Samoa. And this is really through educational campaigns, workshops, and media engagement, in educating the public about the harmful effects of victim blaming and its impact on survivors. Challenge cultural norms. Engaging in open and respectful dialogue within the Samoan communities can challenge harmful cultural norms that contribute to victim blaming, and strengthen legal and institutional responses. I know Mr. Reed talked about advocating for policies in laws that can help survivors and victims of a lot of these social issues. I mean, it includes like ensuring that the laws are comprehensive. Enforcing these laws when it's created also help protect a lot of these victims of sexual assault and victim blaming. And foster collaboration, encouraging collaboration between government agencies. A lot of this can be done through collaboration between agencies and involving in the community and getting the feedback from the community, because really is whatever you create, it's not for you. It's for the community that you're serving. So it's important to involve the community into what you're creating, and then that will hopefully be effective when the time comes when you're trying to bring awareness and education to the community regarding these social issues. So that's all I have regarding victim blaming and looking at it from a cultural perspective. And I know there's youth in this summit, so I really want to leave this summit and leave this for you. Know your value and know your worth. So I have this water bottle here, and really is if you go into a store, like you buy a water bottle for 50 cents, right? And then when you go to a restaurant, it's $1. And then when you're flying, you're traveling and you want to drink, the water bottle is $4. So it's the same water bottle, it's the same water, it's the same taste. The only thing that is changing is its value. So knowing your value is a concept that holds immense importance in shaping the course of your life and determining your happiness and success. So your youth is a period of exploration and self-discovery and growth. And it is time when you start building the foundation of your future. So if you know where you're at, they're not seeing the value that you have, maybe your environment needs to change. And I want to end with this Samoan proverb. Really is speaking to it's our community, and we will solve our own problems by collaborating and involving in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tua'au, for inciting us all on just how impactful victim blaming can go, as well as covering a new point on a secondary victimization of those who voiced out their own grievances despite the stigma around doing so. Now, for anyone with commentary, this is the time for that voice to be heard, as we reserve 3 minutes for a brief Q&A session.
All right, folks, if there are no questions or comments, we will go ahead and start with our second speaker. We now have Ms. Jaylene Chun, who will be speaking about victim blaming through the Fa'afafine lens. She is the founder of Impact, an organization founded to provide a safe space for young LGBTQ members to be able to voice their concerns and emotions, as well as be themselves and not be judged. She's an educator by profession and is currently an instructor for the English department at the American Samoa Community College. She's an advocate and fierce voice of the LGBTQ community. Please welcome Ms. Jaylene Chun.
Thank you so much. Well, first off, I want to give props to Miss Dr. Queenie or Tua'au for a wonderful presentation. She practically said it all. And I think that her presentation was very insightful and informative. She covered, quite an extensive summary of victim blaming. And I think that my presentation takes a bit of a different approach to the topic and for the perspective of the Fa'afafine community. And to be honest, I actually lost my first presentation somehow. So I had to redo this presentation really quickly. And I do feel a little bit inadequate, but I will do my best to provide insight for you all. But again, Talofa Lava and welcome to our 2023 Youth Virtual Summit. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the Alliance for giving me this rare opportunity and space to share the perspectives of the LGBTQIA plus Fa'afafine community. This rare opportunity to discuss Fa'afafine issues with a broad audience of Samoan youth like yourselves and community members is one that I greatly appreciate. I would also like to make a small disclaimer that this presentation, I'm speaking only on behalf of the Impact Group, not on behalf of anyone else, any other organizations, especially Sophia's, even though I am part of Sophia's, but I'm speaking only on behalf of the Impact Group and the Fa'afafines who are part of Impact. Therefore, yeah, if you have any questions or concerns regarding any of what's going to be presented, please direct them to me and nobody else. But before I begin, just giving you a short background on the impact group, since I'm sure some of you are wondering what impact or who impact is. So next slide, please. Okay, impact mission, yes. The Impact Group is a small grassroots community group here in American Samoa that was begun at the American Samoa Community College in 2020 by myself, a couple of students, and a few community members. The reason behind creating Impact was to fill the missing gap for the LGBTQIA plus population. And I say this because, yes, there is Sophia's, but Sophia's focuses mainly on fa'afafine or transgender, which is great. However, what about the other gender identities of the rainbow, such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, intersex, and asexual? I know that some of these gender identities may be new or unfamiliar to some of you, but please save your questions for later and hopefully I can answer them. But as you see on the screen, IMPACT stands for Inclusive, Multifaceted, Progressive Activists Changing Tomorrow. And if you see in our mission statement, we provide a safe space for this population, this marginalized population, to feel united, accepted, appreciated, and supported. And we conduct our own awareness projects and activities aimed at making changes towards social, cultural, economic, technological, and environmental issues. And we also do our best to foster a respect for diversity, embracing individuality, and appreciation for global perspectives and viewpoints that enhance the quality of life. So in summary, Impact Group is a safe space for all non-binary gender identities of American Samoa to come out and discuss and share their perspectives and their issues. So if you or anyone out there is looking for a safe space or place to discuss such topics or issues, Impact is here for you. But I don't want to get any further into that for now, but let's focus on today's theme and the reason I was brought on here to represent the fa'afafine perspective on victim blaming. But before I get into the main part of the presentation, I want to warn you that some of what I am about to present might offend some people, and some of it might be very controversial or make others feel uncomfortable. But again, I am speaking on behalf of the fa'afafine perspective in hopes of enlightening and empowering you, the youth, with new knowledge about how we, as fa'afafines, see victim blaming from our perspective, experience, and point of view. So let me begin by posing the question. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, how do fa'afafines see, how do fa'afafines become victims? Well, in a nutshell, fa'afafines are victims because of various forms of discrimination, oppression, and mistreatment by society on a daily basis. As you can see on the slide, I have pointed out, well, 5 main aspects where fa'afafines are victimized in our local community. I wanted to break this down for you because victimization doesn't just not always focuses on one main reason. So victimization of fa'afafines comes from a variety or various different aspects of discrimination. So we'll begin with the first and most controversial and influential aspect, which is the religion. Because religion has affected all facets of our lives here in American Samoa. To, go over a little bit of a history. The Christian missionaries brought Christianity to our islands way back whenever it was, and our ancestors accepted it as our official religion of the Samoan Islands. But with this religion, the Fa'afafines became victims of religious discrimination. They were automatically considered to be sinners. Now, I don't want to get into a religious debate about this, but in essence, the Christian religion weaponized Christian people to persecute the Fa'afafine community by using the Bible to attack these Fa'afafines. And don't get me wrong, I am a Christian and I believe in God and Jesus, and I do enjoy the parts of Christianity that teach love, kindness, respect, and forgiveness. However, the problem I have stems from when people, especially Samoan religious church leaders and or community members, continue to persecute Fa'afafine people, citing biblical scriptures to attack us Fa'afafine, saying things like God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Well, then where did we Fa'afafine people come from? Didn't God create us? Are we not children of God? This has been a historic controversy for decades, and I do not want to get into it, but we must remember that this weaponizing of religion against Fa'afafines opens the door for many of the other aspects of Samoan society to discriminate against gender identity. I just hope you understand my point here is that religion causes Fa'afafines to be victims of discrimination. Second point there on the same slide is that our language and our culture, in our language and culture, the Fa'afafines are considered to be ma'alaya, a curse, a shame, an embarrassment to the family. Hence the term mala, which we often use when we refer to Fa'afafine. This cultural term automatically victimizes Fa'afafines, causing an altered view with a negative stigma or connotation associated with it. In addition, in our cultural setting, we have the aumanga, the awaluma, or the tinifu, as well as the maftangatama and tina in church. Where do the Fa'afafine fit into these cultural groupings? As you can see, Fa'afafine are not included. They are outcasted. They are victims of cultural discrimination, which leads to the third aspect, the social setting. Socially, Fa'afafine feel that because the religious and cultural discrimination, they're also seen socially as less than a man, less than a woman, not equal to a man, not equal to a woman. This is exhibited, felt by the constant harassment, such as teasing and name calling, or other things such as microaggressions, which come in the form of misgendering or misnaming, which means calling Fa'afafine, which means not calling the Fa'afafine by their preferred gender or preferred name. So basically, Fa'afafines are victims of these social norms. With those first three aspects of discrimination and victimization combined, we believe it all impacted the fourth aspect, the legal aspect. In comparison to all the other United States and territories, American Samoa is the only U.S. territory or state that does not allow for marriage equality among same-sex partners. This is a direct denial of human rights based on gender discrimination. In the eyes of the American Samoa law, Fa'afafines are less of a human and do not deserve the same rights that traditional male and female genders have when it comes to marriage. Fa'afafines are victims of the legal system. And lastly, when it comes to education, all genders suffer some sort of neglect, but there are no sex education courses or curriculum in our public school system. Religiously and culturally, sex is a rather taboo subject for Samoans in general. It makes them uncomfortable. And in the long run, Fafafinas and LGBTQIA plus people suffer the most because they do not have the safe space nor guidance to discuss gender identity issues and sexual health according to their gender identity. This lack of education is a form of neglect and discrimination towards Fa'afafine in not giving them access to proper educational resources and instructors who can help them deal with these issues. In summary on this slide, whether we like to admit it or not, in comparison to traditional male and female genders in the Samoan Islands, Fa'afafines are the only ones who face unnecessary discrimination barrier in all aspects of Samoan society, which prevents them from living a full life with full equality, freedom, and happiness. Fa'afafine are victims of the unacknowledged discrimination, oppression, neglect, and mistreatment that Samoan society has put upon them. Next slide, please. I hope nobody fell asleep yet. How are Fa'afafines victims of sexual violence? Well, this was a very interesting idea to think about. Because as stated in the previous slide, Fa'afafines face a whole lot of discrimination from all aspects of society, which leaves them in very vulnerable position. From our perspective, impact, to avoid feeling vulnerable, Fa'afafines' natural instinct and mentality is to be more feminine. They display their femininity in their behaviors, in their actions, their movements, in the hopes of being acknowledged and accepted into society, whether it be with the females or the males. But they still know that they have their limitations set upon them by this society. The irony of it is that very often the Fa'afafines' portrayal of femininity becomes very convincing and can be even appealing to some of the so-called straight men, especially when it comes to a sexual nature. It's a common held belief that men are very easily sexually aroused and want immediate sexual gratification. And some men see Fa'afafine as a means of sexual satisfaction. Often that Fa'afafines come with what we have claimed as no strings attached. That means that men see Fa'afafines as sexual objects to be used for their sexual satisfaction because number one good reason, Fa'afafine cannot get pregnant. Number two, because there is this unspoken understanding that men see Fa'afafines as just a sexual experience or relationship that will be short-lived because society will not accept it. Therefore, it will be kept a secret, a dirty little secret. And in many cases, most Fa'afafine are victims of sexual violence, such as molestation and rape at a young age. In most cases, these acts of sexual violence go unreported, just like any others, for the fear of shame and embarrassment to the family. But for Fa'afafine, it is mainly due to their gender identity. They have enough stigma facing their gender identity, and they fear that they will be blamed more as a victim for being Fa'afafine if they expose that they were molested, raped, or sexually violated. So they live with these secrets well into adulthood, often feeling that it was they who were to blame, and continue to grow into adulthood. And as adults, many Fa'afafines have sexual continue to have sexual relations with so-called straight men, but it is always kept a secret because those so-called straight men are ashamed or embarrassed for having such sexual relations. Of course, because due to the religious, cultural, social, and legal beliefs stated previously. So Fa'afafine continue to be victims of sexual violence from so-called straight men's sexual curiosity, fantasies, or just for pleasure. It has gotten so bad that even for some Fa'afafine, it has become normal for them to have multiple sexual partners and be extra promiscuous in their quest for acceptance and love from a male companion. But they often forget that society will not fully accept them in all aspects, especially religious, cultural, and legal. So they are denied true romantic love and will continue to live a life of promiscuity, enjoying any man who gives them attention, even if it's for a brief moment or for ulterior motives. It's a constant cycle of Fa'afafine victimization. Next slide, please. So how does society victim blame Fa'afafines? Okay, we all know that when we were born, we were assigned a sex, male or female, based on our sex organs. And with those sex organs came the expectations to be that sex and gender. However, a person's sex at birth does not necessarily define their sexual orientation. Gender identity or expression, which we, in the LGBT world, we call it SOGI, is different for everybody. All humans are born with an innate and natural gender instinct. It is uncontrollable and unchangeable because it is built into us, built into our DNA, much like the color of our hair, the color of our eyes or the texture of our hair. Just like normal heterosexuals, the LGBT and Fa'afafine behave upon their natural instincts. And yes, it is not what might be considered to be normal, but it is not something they can automatically change or turn off. It is part of their person. So for example, you heterosexuals out there, straight people, imagine being forced to be gay. Could you do it? I highly doubt it. Well, that is the same thing for LGBT. You cannot force them to be someone they are not. Many people still believe that people who are LGBT or Fa'afafine choose to be LGBT or Fa'afafine. This is far from the truth. Do you really think that LGBT and Fa'afafine like being different from the normal genders? Do you think that any reasonable human being would deliberately choose a life that is often filled with discrimination and ridicule and persecution? Why would anybody choose that lifestyle? That brings more unnecessary problems and drama within themselves and their families. So just to let you know and remind you, being LGBT or Fa'afafine is not a choice. Just as being heterosexual is not a choice. Did you choose to be heterosexual or straight? I doubt it. It is just what comes naturally to you, right? But society continues to blame Fa'afafine for being who they are because they chose to be this way. I know that it might be difficult to understand, but just go and talk to any Fa'afafine. Ask them, did you choose to be a Fa'afafine? Get to know them and how they feel about their sexuality and gender identity. I'm sure some Fa'afafines may say that they are happy and proud of being Fa'afafines. But I bet you also, if they were given the choice to be a normal straight boy or straight girl, they would rather choose that. And if you did not realize, that is why many Fa'afafine go out of their way to look, portray, or live in the gender identity they feel inside. It is because it is who they feel comfortable as. It is their truth. I highly believe that much respect should be given to people who want to live in their truth, especially when they did not have a choice in being that way. And this leads me to my third question. Who should we blame for Fa'afafine sexual violence? Although we don't want to admit it, we as a society are at fault. We should blame ourselves. We are the ones to blame. Society in general now. I'm speaking for society. We have created a stigma attached to Fa'afafine gender identity, as stated in the previous slides. Societal expectations of gender, whether based on cultural or religious beliefs, continues to be perpetuated to this very day. Boys are supposed to be boys, masculine, tough, strong, and girls are supposed to be girls, feminine, emotional, and soft. And those who are Fa'afafine, what are they supposed to be? They do not fit into these two typical gender stereotypes, and then therefore are stigmatized and seen in a negative light, often called sinners, deviants, disgrace, embarrassment, mala, all negative connotations. It is this stigma that serves as the basis for, again, the discrimination, the violence, abuse that Fa'afafine population experience. So using the cultural and religious beliefs to justify anti-Fa'afafine attitudes has allowed for this abuse and discrimination to continue. Imagine being labeled at the age of 7-year-old, a little boy, labeled as a Fa'afafine, and the emotional, let alone psychological toll that may have on this child at that age, especially when it is in a negative connotation. Couple that with being either molested or raped during your developmental years. This can create so much self-doubt, self-esteem issues for the child, which may lead to further mental health issues in the future. Our cultural and religious values have caused the majority of society to feel this way, leading this marginalized population to continue to be neglected, violated, and victims of society. Next slide. So how can we fix this problem? Stop ignoring the existence of Fa'afafine issues in American Samoa. Okay, Samoan society has created so many unnecessary complications for the lives of the Fa'afafine community. Samoan society has kept this issue swept under the rug for far too long. The sad reality is that Fa'afafines have been living in the shadows, while mainstream Samoan society has not formally and publicly acknowledged and addressed them. The language and rhetoric of Fa'afafines used in the mainland US is unfamiliar and uncommon here in our islands. But what are we afraid of? Currently, we have a lot of Fa'afafine who are successful contributing members of society, but they still live their lives in a narrow margin of inequality. How can we allow these inequalities to exist? We take advantage of Fa'afafine for their creativity, their talents, their skills that benefit us as a society, within our churches, within the government, within our families and our fa'alavalavas. Yet we deny them the same rights that we as binary genders have. How is this fair? Where is the justice in this? How can an island founded on Christian values, as well as cultural values of love and respect for family and society, continue to let this happen? Well, we do. We let it continue to happen because we blame the victim. We blame them for being Fa'afafine. So again, they are both the victim and the blame in this situation. The norm is to ignore and neglect these topics within our schools, homes, and community. There is no sex education curriculum in our public school system, and it is still considered taboo to be discussed in a healthy and educational way. In addition, there are not enough discussions about gender. And this time, I'm not only talking about LGBT and Fafafine, but also gender equality and equity issues. For instance, the lack of female empowerment and female Matai leaders in our villages and community. Why is there not a feminist movement? Why are we still living in a system that sees masculinity as more powerful than femininity or feminism? We live by toxic masculinity. By avoiding these topics, we unintentionally allow for unhealthy behaviors and attitudes to perpetuate and continue, which often leads to more domestic and sexual violence. Culturally, our Samoan way of life sweeps things under the rug for fear of shame and dishonor to the family name. But by doing so, our continued silence and neglect of the tough conversations that need to be had will continue to hurt our people. Our young people will continue to see gender discrepancies if we do not have this dialogue. Shouldn't we equip them with healthy knowledge and awareness to make a better and more informed decisions regarding all of these issues? So I believe that in the end, we need sex and gender education empowerment, appreciation for all genders and what they can bring to the table. And that concludes my presentation for today. I did not want to put you guys to sleep, but thank you so much for listening. And I appreciate again the opportunity to share. And I hope I was able to enlighten and empower you in some small way. But I guess we'll entertain any questions or comments you may have out there. I guess there are no questions or comments, and I guess it was that boring, but thank you again for allowing me to present and discuss something I'm passionate about. And hopefully we'll see more people coming out to support Impact. You know, we're always welcome to new members or community members out there. Whether or not you're LGBT, you can still be an ally because you think that gender issues are important to be discussed within our community. Like I said before, that, you know, tough discussions need to be had about these various issues, especially gender. There's just too many times we don't have the space, and we keep, by being silent or ignoring it, in our churches, villages, families, almost, like I said, all the other aspects. It's unspoken, unacknowledged. When are we going to address it? So it is up to you, the new generation, and for those of us who are facing these forms of victimization, discrimination, and or persecution, to bring it up. And I think that you know, the Alliance is a wonderful space to help us get started and promote these issues to the forefront. But again, thank you again. And I'm going to turn it over to the committee.
There you have it, folks. That was Ms. Jaylene with her guidance on a Fafafingi's perspective regarding victim blaming. I personally really enjoyed your presentation because it really speaks on how sexual and domestic violence can really happen to absolutely anyone, no matter what. And that's what that's one factor that people tend to ignore. Hence why they victim blame. Before the interns continue, we just want to share some of the comments as well that are flooding the chat box, as well as the some of the comments from the live stream on Facebook. And there's so many comments that are thanking Jaylene, so as the other presenters as well, starting from Mr. Reed, Dr. Tua'au, and Jaylene. There's a lot of comments thanking them for their passionate presentations. Thank you for being passionate and for creating that safe space for young Fafafines. Thank you, Jaylene, for sharing and normalizing these conversations. Love it. Thank you, Jaylene, for these amazing presentation. Malolava, Jaylene, on your presentation, inspiring and very informative. Powerful presentation and information, much appreciated. So yeah, there might not have been any questions, but there's so much appreciation for the presentation, Miss Jaylene. You are doing awesome, Jaylene. I'm learning a lot. And the same for Mr. Tia. That was awesome. I heard the story, but didn't know about Chanel. Would definitely get that book. See, there's just a lot of great information that's flooding the summit today. So we just wanted to acknowledge that and make sure that the presenters are aware of that. Thank you, everyone.